we're not entitled per se as millennials, but we become more impatient. And how I look at it as it's a great option to have in your restaurant tool belt. There's like Violet's Vegan, there's Simply Pure, there's Panacea. There's a lot of different restaurants here in Vegas that are promoting either all plant-based or mostly plant-based, and they taste great. There's great foods.
What's the closest one that gets to like most of the like to get to the healthy part? Like either that one or like would you say vegetation?
It depends what you get, because some of them have like if you get a plant-based or vegan hamburger, the bun could be still have gluten in it potentially, which causes inflammation in the intestinal lining for most people, even if you don't feel it. Now you could feel it early, later on in life. So it depends, I would say. You just have to shop smart and just kind of know what's in your food. Is it GMO? Is there gluten? Those are kind of the watch outs.
I would think that you need first to educate yourself, and I think you are going to accomplish that with your programs.
Mm-hmm.
And you also need a support group that will join you,
Yep.
so that you have the environment, you don't feel like everybody's looking at you,
Right.
and you can do that.
But what I've also learned too is when I'm teaching people, they have to want it. Because my mom,
Yeah.
she doesn't want it. I'm still the baby boy who, I call it powdered butt syndrome. She's like, she hasn't said this, but she said this, which is, I've powdered your butt as a baby.
Yeah, right.
Who are you to tell me about health? You're not Dr. Oz, Dr. Phil, Dr. Axe. You're not any of these doctors, and you don't have it. And so for her, it's hard to say no to somebody in a white coat with an MD behind their name in a nice office. As soon as she steps in there and tells her the problem, she's like, and they give the prescription, she's like, okay, yes, doctor. It's just like, for me, I'm like, well, 6% of physicians are trained in nutrition. They're not. They don't know that the father of modern medicine was Hippocrates, and he said, "Let food be thy medicine, and medicine be thy food." And yet the great grandkids, which is what we know as modern medicine today, don't prescribe apples and kale and spinach and green smoothies and salads and vegan chilies as the prescription for your digestion issues or your energy, your sleep, or your diabetes. They give you a synthetic option. And so there's been a falling out with great grandpa, which is no surprise because there's a lot of history in that, but that's a whole other class.
I was just gonna say, wouldn't that also have to deal with the fact that it's also corporate, that when doctors prescribe, some of them get a commission off of what the products they sell?
I know chemo specifically, doctors get the doctor prescribing that gets a cut. So it is commission based on that, which is a lot of times why there's so many chemo treatments. With regards to medications, they're not supposed to, but there may be some incentives that they may be able to get, whether that's trips or other things. But see, they have to be careful about that because if they get caught too. So, but predominantly, doctors are just paid on the time you spend in their office, and so they're incentivized. The incentive structure is off, so they're paid. So in the U.S., it's basically it's focused on what's wrong with you. When do you go to the doctor? When you're sick. When do you take medication? When you're sick. When do you go to the emergency room? When something's wrong. What if it was switched like it was in some parts of China back in the day, where basically the doctor was paid only when you were well, and the moment you got sick or anything bad happened to you, their payment stopped for that month.
Yeah.
What if that would happen here? If doctors only got paid while you were well, then they would be like, the moment you got a little sniffle, they'd be like, whoa, what you got? All right, what you eating, what you taking, what you smoking, what you drinking, because we gotta get that sniffle going because this month's payment needs to make sure it hits the bank account. Or, they probably wouldn't say that, but that's what I would be thinking. I'd be like, you need to get that sniffle going, like prescribe you some kale and some green smoothie and we're gonna get you right, so I'll be playing around.
It's funny.
Yeah, so our system is not incentivized for the right things.
They need to change their mindset.
Yeah.
Like I always thought, the two cultures, the two schools of thought of medicine should kind of blend, like the West and the East, especially China. China has got thousands of years of experience.
Yeah.
And they know a lot of things that, well, I had the experience with my mother, and they proved that.
Yeah.
But there are many other things. I've seen documentaries. They're way past as far as their development
And I'm not against modern medicine. Modern medicine is really good for traumatic care. Broken bones, gunshot wounds, stab wounds, things that are life-threatening. What we're not good in the US is preventative healthcare. And so we're also really good at diagnostics, blood tests, x-rays, CAT scans. And so what I recommend for my clients is, hey, traumatic stuff, go to a doctor. Don't rub some green smoothie or take a supplement if you got a gunshot wound or if you got a stab wound or you broke a bone. No, you need to go see the emergency room for those life-threatening things. And if you don't know what's wrong, get some diagnostics. Get a blood test. Get if you have to or whatever it is, CAT scan or X-ray if something's not right, or get the diagnostics, figure out the root cause of what's wrong, and then use something natural based on education and fact-based research and information to provide the solution that they are not specialized in. They're not specialized in nutrition. They're not specialized in root cause and natural. And so use the best of what modern medicine has, traumatic care and diagnostics, with the best of what nature has, which is preventative, proactive, natural, no side effects, no resistance buildup, really stuff that address the root cause. And then you can have a good merger of the East and West. And so when people do that, then you can get a lot of benefits. Actually, your quality of life will just continue to go. And your costs will go.
Yes.
That's how it works.
Yeah, there's technology for that, for diagnostics, but I think, I was joking with someone today, this morning, about the fact that sometimes I listen to some of the pharmaceutical commercials, and then I said that, how could I ever take any of those medicines when they start the disclaimers that if you stop
Yeah.
reading, if you can't see anymore, if you feel like killing yourself or this. I said, why would I take that? I don't want to kill myself, I like myself.
Right.
But they do that. I guess it's partly it's a legal requirement so they can
Yeah.
protect themselves, but they do have the potential of those side effects.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there's a lot of chemical stuff that maybe we don't need.
I believe food is the best medicine, and specific types of foods.
I have a
But yeah.
question.
Mhm.
Do you think, how all of the additional hormones and everything that are spraying in plants and in food right now, like processed foods, would affect your chemicals, your brain? So, as generations go, when they be affected emotionally, that's
Absolutely.
if there's a connection towards. Because I've been seeing lately, apparently millennials are more, I guess, weak mentally, but that's another aspect. But I'm just saying, is there a tie to what we're eating too, and the increase of chemicals they're putting in our food?
Yeah, well, I think it's a number of things. It's with the introduction of all this type of technology, we're really, I think Simon Sinek said we're not entitled per se as millennials, but we become more impatient. And how I look at it as back in the day when we didn't have any technology, it took probably about a week for that message to be mailed by horseback to get to that person, and then probably they have to read it a day or two, think about the response, and then another week to get back to them. So that person who originally sent it would probably be 2.5 weeks by the time they got a response.
Yeah.
And now, if somebody doesn't respond back in 2.5 hours, we're like, are they dead? Are they cheating? Are they, doing this? Like, what happened? And so I think we've like Simon said, we've just become more impatient, and I'm guilty of that too. So I'm not trying to point the finger, but I'm aware of it though, and I want to be more aware of that type of stuff. And I think the foods certainly have an effect. When you pump hormones, antibiotics, steroids into animals, they say you are what you eat, and so what we do is we consume their flesh. If you eat meat and dairy and stuff like that, they become a part of our body. They go into our cells, they go into our brain, they go into our gut. They can destroy certain aspects of our endocrine system, which is basically our system that regulates our metabolism, our hormones, our appetite. And so there's this cocktail or soup effect that happens when you mix all this stuff. And it's hard to pinpoint and say this one thing did it, because disease doesn't start with one hamburger, it starts with 1,000, and so it's more of this process of over time.